all Rwandans prefer calling themselves Rwandans than those categorizations that led to the genocide. So I believe that Ethiopia as a country and Ethiopians as great people with their great culture and values can go back to their values and try to identify things that used to unite them, which they can base on to move forward. For those that are stakeholders in what happened in Ethiopia, and the current actors need to come together, sit down, and agree on the way forward, because it is their lives that is going to be implicated, not only in the implementation, but also in living the outcome of the transitional justice. And if you wanted to have a lasting post-conflict situation, you don't want to use a mechanism that is going to create other people who are unhappy. So you want at least, of course, it is not possible that everybody will agree. But what you have to do is to make sure that at least even those ones who will not agree understand why you're doing what you're doing. So I would suggest that all actors get involved and contribute.
Two decades ago, in 1994, the Eastern African nation, Rwanda, was hard hit by genocide. Neighbors turned on neighbors, family turned on family. It was one of the deadliest conflicts in the history of the world. Within 3 months alone, close to 1 million people died. And many people were wondering whether the country can pass that tragedy. And time has given its own answer. And the answer is yes, yes. Rwanda has successfully passed that tragedy, and now Rwanda has become one of the most peaceful countries in the world. But the question is, how did the country manage to pass that conflict and hatred between and among peoples of the country? Most people agree, like the transitional justice which was implemented in Rwanda after 1994 has paved the way for peace, democracy, and for the creation of progressive society in the country. Hello and welcome, viewers. My guest for today is Dr. Alphonse Muleefu, who is a senior lecturer of law at Rwanda University. So we are reaching Dr. Muleefu via Skype. He is in Rwanda, Kigali today. Hello, Dr. Muleefu. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. Dr. Muleefu, just allow me to say a few words about yourself. So, like I said before, Dr. Alphonse Muleefu is Senior Lecturer of Law at Rwanda University. Dr. Muleefu is Chair of Politics in Good Governance Commission of Pan-Africanism, Rwanda Chapter. He is a board member of Rwanda Initiative for Sustainable Development and Lead for Rwanda Tomorrow. Previously, Dr. Muleefu worked with Gakaka Court, International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. He also worked with International Criminal Court, ICC. Dr. Muleefu, it's a great honor to talk to you. But first, have you been invited to Ethiopian media? What's your knowledge of Ethiopia, and how do you come to know about Ethiopia? Let's start with this.
Ethiopia is a very well-known country in Africa. The fact that it was able to defeat colonialism and is the only country that was never colonized is something that is prominent for Africans to feel proud about. Yes, I've been to Ethiopia twice, but not invited by media. There's a time I came when I was coming to attend an event that was organized by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And it was a great opportunity to see around and visit parts of Addis. And the University of Rwanda also hosts students from Ethiopia who come to study in some of our programs.
All right. Dr. Muleefu, it's fantastic to hear such words from you about Ethiopia. So today you are here to speak about the success story of Rwanda in terms of winning the divisive politics that leads to the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. It's a great lesson, isn't it? How is Rwanda doing today? How the different ethnic groups are living together in Rwanda? You know, as far as I read so many literatures, Rwanda has now become a fascinating country. For example, Ethiopians are now coming to Rwanda for experience sharing, like to bring experience from Rwanda in terms of good governance, democracy, people-to-people relation, and other stuff. So how Rwanda is doing right now?
As you rightly said, Rwanda has walked a very difficult path, but it is true to say that it is at a very good stage today of bringing people together. Rwanda chose, after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Rwanda chose the approach of social cohesion, unity, reconciliatory justice, but more importantly, it chose inclusive politics, which has brought all sectors of Rwandans together and feel part of the process of development and changes that are happening in the country. And I think Rwanda can only offer some experiences. They can share experience, but Ethiopia has great culture and great people. And one of the things Rwanda did was to look back into the Rwandan culture and values and see those things that unite people, that used to unite Rwandans together, and one of which is the national identity, where now today all Rwandans prefer calling themselves Rwandans than those categorizations that led to the genocide. So I believe that Ethiopia as a country and Ethiopians as great people with their great culture and values can go back to their values and try to identify things that used to unite them, which they can base on to move forward.
How the transitional justice was implemented in Rwanda? As far as I know, the transitional justice process involves like identifying the perpetrators of crime and the victims of the crime, and there are other stuffs as well. So how the transitional justice was done in Rwanda?
So Rwanda had almost a whole year of dialogue trying to discuss on how to get out of the challenges they were faced with, including justice. So the most popular mechanism that was used was Gacaca courts. This is a traditional mechanism that was used to deal with minor cases in the traditional Rwanda. By this time, it was modified to deal with the crime of genocide because these crimes were committed in the broad daylight, so people knew who did what. So there was information within communities. So it was very easy for communities to come back and get, but also the justice that was provided was the reconciliatory justice. There was the suspension of sentences, community service, and imprisonment, especially for those who did not want to confess crimes they were suspected of when they were found guilty. So it was the mixture of different approaches that brought Rwanda where it is today. But more importantly, it was leadership, because things do not happen in the vacuum. There is always going to be someone who is going to bring people together.
Why do you think the transitional justice implemented in Rwanda became successful? For example, my country, Ethiopia, has also implemented transitional justice in the past, but that was not successful. So from your vantage point, why the transitional justice implemented in your country after the 1994 genocide became successful?
One of the things that contributed to the success of transitional justice mechanisms in Rwanda, as I had said, one of it is leadership. The strong leadership that had a clear view of where the country needed to come from and where they wanted it to go. More important also is the ownership, because transitional justice mechanisms that were adopted in Rwanda were broadly owned by Rwandans. And this is also connected to the fact that when genocide against the Tutsi was happening in the presence of the international community, it was stopped by Rwandans. So all this gave credibility to Rwandans to trust that they can do things by themselves. So I can say leadership, ownership, and legitimacy that the post-genocide government had within the Rwandan society. Those are key aspects that I think contributed to the success of transitional justice mechanisms in Rwanda.
So how transitional justice contributed for peace and stability of Rwanda, like how the victims were compensated, how perpetrators of crime were brought to justice? Tell us this a little bit.
So it was, as I said, a combination of a lot of things. There was, in terms of punishment, there was a combination of retributive justice, where those who were found guilty were sentenced to imprisonment, but there were those who were sentenced to community service, and those who were given suspension, and those who had committed the crimes or against property were simply required to return what they had looted or destroyed. So it was a combination of a lot of things. In terms of reparations, there was assistance to the victims. All the victims, survivors of the genocide, were given social protection in terms of medical care, housing. They were even supported financially to start some income-generating activities. But this is not to confuse it with compensation, because there were no compensation as such. There was assistance, because there was a fund that was created purposely to support and assist survivors of the genocide to deal with the challenges of the daily life challenges. For example, those who wanted to take kids to school, they were given means to do so. Those who wanted to start business, those who had lost their houses. So it was a combination of a lot of things that brought those who had suffered the crime back to, you can't say normalcy, but to be able to stand on their own.
All right. So apparently transitional justice was implemented in Rwanda because there was a mistake, because there was a war, because there was a gross violation of human rights, because there was massive atrocity. So at this time, how do the people of Rwanda regretted of that past mistake, past war with itself?
Rwanda's transitional justice mechanisms incorporated the aspect of asking for forgiveness, showing remorse, and if you confess for the crimes that you were accused of, there was an additional requirement that you show all those that were accomplices, but also show where the dead bodies of those who were killed were thrown, because there was most of the information was withheld with those who committed the crimes. So it was as I said, popularly owned by your people, and the perpetrators contributed a lot in discovering information. Those who accepted to confess for the crimes they committed. But as I had also said, the crime of genocide against the Tutsi was committed in the broad light, so the community itself had information, and that was very important in contributing to healing. Of course, reconciliation is very key. So bringing people, perpetrators, victims together was one of the strategies, but it was not, I would say, forced on people to forgive. It was left for people. The state would simply provide a forum where those who felt that they needed to forgive, they would do so. Those who wanted to seek forgiveness, they would do so. And there were different interventions from both the government, but also from the civil society. So the Association of Genocide Survivors and other non-government organizations contributed to the hearing process.
All right. Dr. Muleefu, though the magnitude and type of crisis is different from Rwanda, Ethiopia has also passed through a series of cycle of civil war. Like I said before, Ethiopia has not experienced a Rwandan-like genocide, but there was civil war in the past. So now there is a need, there is a strong desire to implement transitional justice in Ethiopia. So what is your general advice for Ethiopians in terms of conducting a successful transitional justice?
One thing I think people needed to put into consideration is the ownership. As I said, that is very key, because however much you would want to seek lessons from elsewhere, but these are issues that concerns ordinary people, Ethiopians, and they need to contribute in finding solution that is fitting in their context, because there is no transitional justice that can be applied in all situations. So you can borrow lessons from one place to another, but the advice is for those that are stakeholders in what happened in Ethiopia, and the current actors need to come together, sit down, and agree on the way forward, because it is their lives that is going to be implicated, not only in the implementation, but also in living the outcome of the transitional justice, because it is entirely about your way forward as a nation. And as I said from the beginning, Ethiopia has a great culture and values. If they can go back to those to their culture and values, I'm sure they are going to find solutions to the challenges they are going through, or those that they have gone through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how should it be inclusive? Do you have advice in this regard? How should it be inclusive, like including all stakeholders in the process?
Inclusive is key, because if you leave out some, those who will be left out will feel disenfranchised. They will feel marginalized. And if you wanted to have a lasting post-conflict situation, you don't want to use a mechanism that is going to create other people who are unhappy. So you want at least, of course, not. It is not possible that everybody will agree, but what you have to do is to make sure that at least even those ones who will not agree understand why you're doing what you're doing. So I would suggest that all actors get involved and contribute, and then try to reach a consensus. Because the country remains, for Ethiopians, the outside world can contribute in terms of suggestions and support, but it is all about Ethiopians and how they want to live together. That is very important. Implementing transitional justice, you don't want to threaten anyone. So those in power also need to feel secure that the process they are going through is not going to threaten them. So transitional justice is about give and take. So no one is going to get 100% of what he or she desires. So I think for both actors, there is going to be a need of, this is what we are willing to sacrifice for the well-being of the nation, because a nation, Ethiopia, needs to survive, and it will survive. But for it to survive, there will need to be some sacrifices, and no one else is going to sacrifice for Ethiopia other than the Ethiopians themselves, including those that are in positions of power.
All right. Dr. Alphonse Muleefu, Senior Lecturer of Law at the University of Rwanda, really thank you very much for taking time to conduct this interview. I hope I will see you in another show. Thank you for the time being, and take care. Yeah?
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks a lot. Dear viewers, that brings us to the end of our program for today. Many thanks for watching, and please do stay with the rest of our programs. Bye for now.